week. AEW Full Gear is this Saturday night from the Forum in Los Angeles, California. A place WWE doesn't go too often. They're going there for a house show post the holidays. But the old home of the LA Lakers and the LA Kings now, being used for AEW for the most part when it comes to wrestling content. A pay-per-view that they hold every single year. What will be obviously a bigger deal when they have more pay-per-views. They have another pay-per-view before the year is over. So this isn't the final AEW pay-per-view of 2023. But the big news, I guess, that they made heading into this pay-per-view before getting into the card is Tony Khan has sent out a tweet yesterday prior to Dynamite that AEW has agreed to terms with one of the world's best wrestlers, a pro who is known and respected by virtually every AEW fan, and they will come to LA this weekend to sign their contract at Full Gear. So we put out on, the Heel to the Face podcast, X/Twitter account. I put out a little poll to maybe what some people may say or believe, and I put out some options. You're only allowed so many options, but I put these as my options, right? We got Goldberg, we got Mercedes Moné, we got Dolph Ziggler, and then we have other, essentially encompassing anybody that isn't those three.
The field.
Right?
Yeah, the field. Yeah.
So other is currently leading the way with 36%, while Dolph Ziggler and Mercedes Moné are at 29%, and Goldberg is at 7%. And I heard them discussing this topic all day on Busted Open Radio as well, which opened my eyes to maybe some other options out there. But Brandon, I guess, who are you thinking is signing an AEW contract this weekend? Or has signed, or will be, signing their AEW contract this weekend at Full Gear. A well-respected wrestler at that.
Well, you just said it, well-respected. So for me, well-respected wrestler means Dolph freaking Ziggler, baby. And that's where I'm going. And you put, when you're listing off our poll, I'm like, the obvious answer is Dolph Ziggler at this point. Like, the more you sit there and think about it, he's very well-respected. He's been in the business a long time. The AEW audience likes him because they know how good he is as a wrestler. And a lot of AEW fans are probably like, well, if he was in AEW, he would be able to be utilized in a better way than WWE has used him over the last few years. So, and Dolph Ziggler also, a lot of people, maybe they don't realize this, but Dolph Ziggler actually has a pretty darn good comedic career that he has. And he's done stuff in LA at the famous comedy clubs and whatnot in LA.
Yes, he's done stuff at every comedy club he can be near. Yes,
but that's the thing, though. He has that appeal where it's not only just WWE, or not WWE, but wrestling as a whole, but he has the entertainment value. So for me, it's Dolph Ziggler, and it's nobody else. Here's the thing. Here's what I'll tell you, though. Like, Mercedes Moné, I'm just over it. Like, okay, great. People are still, like, interested at this point. Like, I'm over the whole Mercedes Moné thing. I don't know if it's just me, but like, okay, great, you're gonna be somewhere soon. We've been hearing this forever. Like, the last match you had, you didn't look that great in the match. So like, I'm kind of over it. But Goldberg, no freaking way. Like, Goldberg would be like the worst option. Like, that would be Tony
Goldberg and Powerhouse Hobbs. Come on, you don't want to see that?
No, absolutely not. Like, and I would feel bad for Powerhouse Hobbs because Goldberg is not known as the safest worker, as Bret Hart would always say. We've told that story multiple times. But Dolph Ziggler's the answer. If it's not Dolph Ziggler, then maybe somebody good from New Japan.
Well, I heard some other options and similar to the whole Dolph Ziggler thing. And obviously the 90-day compete clauses are all, are brought up in this stuff. But it makes me think of somebody named Shelton Benjamin. He is somebody, like I said, I believe he's on that 90-day no-compete clause. Maybe he's allowed to go sign the contract and then sit back down, kind of thing. I'm not sure how that works, but he is somebody who's well-respected, right, in the business.
I don't think so. Let me rephrase that. And I'm not 100% on the non-compete clauses, but I don't think you can appear in any other organization, whether it's wrestling or not, for the 90 days. So I don't think you can even sign the contract. I think that's still a breach of contract. If I'm not mistaken.
Is Dolph Ziggler still, because I believe Dolph Ziggler was a part of that same group, right? So
let me see. Dolph Ziggler,
Shelton Benjamin. I feel like they were part of that same most recent, layoff group. About a month ago. But here's one I'm going to throw out there while you're looking that up. Right? Here's one that I thought boy, that's kind of a genius. So I'm not going to take any credit for it as much as Dave LaGreca over there on, on the Busted Open
What
radio
did he
show.
say?
He said one that I think it would be bigger than those names, right? Bigger than those names, but not surprising to see, but bigger than those names in the terms of signing a contract, right? I'm talking a one, Maxwell Jacob Friedman.
Oh, wow. Good call. LaGreca. Wow, that's pretty good.
Because, I mean, that's right. We're talking the big war of 2024. Maybe the big thing is sealing. I mean, this is like sports, right? You seal the guy up, right?
Yeah.
The big bidding war. I mean, so if the Angels of Los Angeles in baseball said they were signing a big contract today, because right now, technically, Ohtani is not under their contract as of this minute, right? But if they were, let's say, mid-season, say they were going to sign a big contract, it could have been to sign him, their already existing player. It doesn't necessarily always have to mean a new person, but I think MJF signing him to an extension, right, and signing him to a new contract is just as big, if not bigger, than signing Dolph Ziggler. I think if you're Tony Khan, personally, right? I mean, if you're going to bring in Dolph Ziggler, great. I mean, more the merrier. But if you had to think about what is your bigger focus right now when it comes to signing anyone to a contract, it's MJF more than it's bringing in Dolph Ziggler.
And
right?
by the way,
Dolph Ziggler ain't going to lead the way if MJF is gone.
My Dolph Ziggler hype that I just had a moment ago, I'm going to just kind of back down a little bit because I'm sitting here I'm looking at the dates here because I don't remember. There's so many damn releases in this business, you forget all the time, like when they are. So he actually, if my thought is you can't appear on a show whatsoever for 90 days, then that takes Dolph Ziggler out until January. So you're right that end of December, January would be where Dolph could do it. So to your point, or to Busted Open's LaGreca there, Dave LaGreca, bringing up the MJF part, man, that would suck. Honestly, because I want him, and I'm selfishly like AEW would be a good thing, obviously, like considering the bidding war 2024. But it would suck because I want to see Maxwell Jacob Friedman in WWE.
Well, there's also, I mean, here's two names that are out there that are free agents currently. But actually, so I'll say one is most likely for sure completely off the table. But a current free agent, I was going to say, is Heath Slater. Now, I know he's actually scheduled to appear at a independent wrestling show locally here, Central New York, this weekend on Saturday night. So, but he is a free agent. I mean, I'll just mention that. I would imagine if AEW was going to sign him to a contract that he'd have to no-show that show in Whitesboro, New York on Saturday night. But just that's a name. I'm saying that's not a very viable name, but it is a name nonetheless.
No, that's not
another
that's
free
not
agent from
enough.
the Impact world is Mickie James. Mickie James recently kind of has parted ways from Impact Wrestling. Very surprised, right? We all thought she would stay there until that whole retirement tour thing came about, but all reports are saying that she is no longer in Impact Wrestling. So that opens her up as well as an option. I think she's very well respected. We talked off air about Sami Callihan. He's very respected. I don't necessarily know what kind of splash he would make. And
he'd be a good get. He'd be a good get for them.
To be honest with you, here's the thing. And this is not money related. This is just consolidation related. If I was going to bring in Sami Callihan, if I was AEW, I would probably want to be releasing some talent myself. He's great talent, but it's just, I guess AEW can have too much talent. I think right now they have too much talent. They've got too many people. And it's like, listen, there's like stuff out there, right? If I'm going to add some big time, adding item to my wardrobe, some big time thing, I don't necessarily need to get rid of something. If I'm going to add some major item to my wardrobe that stands alone, that's like Edge, if you will, in the wrestling world, or is like, re-signing MJF or something like that. You can make room for something like that. But if I'm going to just add some fly-by-night $5 t-shirt that's just going to be thrown on a pile of t-shirts, at that point, I'm like, you know what? I think if I'm gonna add this t-shirt that's just going to be thrown in the mix, at least I'm going to get rid of a t-shirt. You know what I mean? At the same time. So I think that if you're going to add Sammy Callahan, who's a great talent, you're not going to make him a main event picture right away, if probably ever. I don't know, right? So if that's the
I think he's
case,
a mid card guy.
mid card at best, I would say, when it comes to
Yeah.
his notoriety. I mean, great if you promote him to a main event level, but definitely coming in, you're going to put him somewhere in your Casino Royale Battle Royal, right? And if that's the case, you got to take someone out of the Casino Royale Battle Royals that you got going on there. And I think it's more or less than taking someone out and then letting them go get an opportunity elsewhere.
Well, here's the other thing though with Sammy Callahan, really quick. Wouldn't it be kind of cool to have him do something with Mox in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah,
Cool.
I mean that's great too. Like I said, I just feel like I'm not saying you got to get rid of some big. I just feel like if we're gonna add something to this, right, we got to get rid of something. It's literally,
yeah.
It's literally like peanut butter cups go great with chocolate chips and a cookie, but when you add peanut butter cups and raisins and chocolate chips and chocolate drizzle and whipped cream and so much stuff, that there's a part of that item that you're like, all right, well, I think this actually would be probably better without an item that I'm not even tasting anymore. This cookie has got so much stuff in it that I don't even taste the triple chocolate chip way down the line here anymore. It's not even a featured item in the ingredients. So to be honest with you, because I'm not even tasting it, and I think that's a great analogy. If there's talent out there, we're essentially not tasting. It's just so overloaded with things that we don't even notice they're there. And frankly, they don't add anything to our viewing experience. It's like what people talk about all the time with WWE, and they want Monday Night Raw to be 3 hours. They want SmackDown to be 3 hours. They want more time for more talent. Listen, I'm not a charity case. We don't need that, right? As a fan, I want Raw to be 1 hour. I want it to be cutthroat. I want Roman Reigns and the main Seth Rollins to take up 100% of that time. And if there's some sort of tag team that doesn't get their time in that 1 hour of Monday Night Raw, and they gotta toil around in independence, I'm sorry, I feel bad for them, but it's like the same, right? It's like anything else. It's competition, right? I mean, do you feel bad that everybody can't be president of the United States? I don't, you don't, right? We don't feel that way as people who aren't in those skins. Obviously, it's just life, right? I'm not going to go to a restaurant and say, oh, the service was horrible, but I felt great because 956 people all had jobs. They were stepping on each other, and they were, and each of them only got a nickel tip from me because I can't afford to tip every single one of them, but I'm glad they all got jobs, right? You don't run the restaurant. You're not there to be a humanitarian. You're there to get a good experience, right? I'm there to watch wrestling, to get the best wrestling experience,
well, dude,
to get the most
exciting. It's an overhead thing too. Not only just in the work for like in the I'll just say the non-entertainment sports entertainment wrestling world. I would say you have to cut fat, and I think you're right. Like there's a lot of wasted money, I feel like. And Tony Khan has enough of it, so people argue, well, he's a billionaire, so he could pay a good amount of money to people to keep them employed. And I'd love to see as many people employed, regardless if it's wrestling or this local diner or whatever the case may be. But from another sense, like, yes, some people are okay with just collecting a check, but there's a lot of wrestlers that are super talented that, maybe they want to actually wrestle. So, like, to me, like, I feel like a lot of these talented dudes are buried on the bench and they're just not being used. So.
Here's the thing: if you really feel as a wrestling fan, when it comes to like having this large amount of talent, that that's great from it is probably great from a paycheck perspective, very WCW like, right? But as a wrestling fan, and even for them, they might succeed, right? In ECW and stuff like that existed thanks to WWE and WCW. WCW was not limited, right? But when WCW started bringing in everyone and anyone, it hurt ECW and it also hurt WCW. So it hurt both, right? There were people leaving ECW to go to WCW to get the paycheck. And when they could be featured very heavily on an ECW card, so the ECW card's weaker because their main star is now gone, right? So it's like that, it's I look at it like the minor league baseball perspective all the time. You know what I mean? When you if a player gets called up to sit on the bench, everybody loses because he's not playing for the New York Yankees, and then he's not selling T-shirts for the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Yankees. So he's everyone loses, right? So it's the same perspective. I don't care about people getting TV time. I would much rather, and this takes me back to when I was a kid. I would watch those Saturday shows like Jacked and Sunday Night Heat and all those like those secondary programs, right? And they remind me a lot of like Rampage. If I'm always watching new talent on those shows, it's hard for me to get invested, right? When I turn on SmackDown, I want to see SmackDown people. I want to see the top of the line. If I turn on SmackDown and it ends up being, some guys that I've never seen before, it ends up being the Street Profits versus some jobbers. And then, because to me, that's a lot like of what AEW secondary programs kind of are, right? I tune on, Rampage, and I'm like, where's John Moxley? Oh, I don't know this person. Okay, where's MJF? Okay, never mind. Okay, that's not MJF. Okay, where's Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho? Okay, that's not, it just makes them all, not as interested. I want Raw to be Rock and Mick Foley kicking off the show with The Undertaker and Stone Cold every single week. Like, you want to get right to the nitty gritty. You want to get to those big stars. I don't want to just go to an AEW branded show and then it just be a bunch of people I've never heard of, or if you don't follow AEW closely, you don't know that well, right? It's 12 matches of, I don't know. I mean, similar to like, let's get into this AEW full card, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I recognize a lot of the names here, right? That's why I'm interested in watching this pay-per-view. This doesn't look like a Rampage card to me. This doesn't look like AEW Dark Elevation, right? And frankly, AEW Dark Elevation, AEW Dark, those are more examples of too much.
And here's the other thing, too. Another thing to note, just like he has been lately, MJF's pulling double duty. He's starting the show and he's finishing the show.
Do you know who's going to be his tag team partner on the pre-show defending those Ring of Honor tag belts against the Guns?
Wouldn't it be funny if it was like Roderick Strong?
I mean, it would be. I think
how
it's a
random
little too
would that
much
be?
of a spoke in the thing, right? Because this is a pre-show. You got to also remember too, this is a pre-show here. We're not looking to make like this isn't Austin, joining forces with Vince McMahon, like WrestleMania 17 style on the pre-show, right?
So I would say if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Samoa Joe.
It is. I don't think it's
remember the deal. Remember that deal that Joe's been putting out on programming every week. He just cut a promo this week saying, hey, I'll help you out in the tag match, but you got to give me a world heavyweight match. I'm just saying.
It could be, and we move down the line, maybe MJF versus Samoa Joe for the world title at the next AEW pay-per-view. But the main card here, MJF, Jay White, I'm really looking forward to that match. I think, the promotion for it hasn't been horrible, but let's be real. If WWE could promote that match, I would like to see AEW version of that match with WWE's promotion behind it. That's kind of what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the MJF Jay White promotion in WWE, but the match take place in AEW. I think it's going to be a great match. Both those guys are great workers. Obviously, we talk about Jay White and how he's kind of floundered since he's been in AEW. This is his opportunity to be what he's supposed to be, essentially in any company he goes into. He's supposed to be in the main event. He's supposed to be on the marquee. He's supposed to be the one helping sell tickets. So I'm very much looking forward to this match. Another match I guess I'm interested in, but I think it's one of those they're giving away their hand, and that's Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho as the Golden Jets versus the Young Bucks, with the stipulation if Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho win, they will get an AEW World Tag Team Championship opportunity. But if the Young Bucks win, the Golden Jets must disband, this isn't the Young Bucks disbanding. This is a tag team that essentially was just created disbanding. I imagine
the Young Bucks are winning this match.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be real, they don't even need that stipulation, because if the Young Bucks win the match, I imagine that Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho would disband anyways, right? It's not like there's some hardened, lifelong tag team over here. I think it's one of those, you put these things together and they succeed until they no longer succeed. And at the first sign of, turmoil within the group, boom, they break up, that kind of thing. So
the match I want to see, obviously, besides MJF and Jay White, they're building up this Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland match pretty good. This death match I think is going to be good.
No, that's been one they've been building up for a while, and obviously I think the WWE kind of match we're getting here that I'm looking forward to when it comes to notoriety. right, is Sting and Darby Allin and Edge, Adam Copeland with Ric Flair versus Christian, Luchasaurus, and Nick Wayne. So I'm looking forward to that match. It's both.
Well, we
It's
already
going to
know
be
who's winning
entertaining.
that match, right? It's going to be Adam Copeland's not losing that match.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be the faces over the heels, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're not bringing Copeland in to frickin' have him start losing matches. I just don't, that doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I guess it depends on what your long-term storyline telling is. I mean, we're going to probably get Edge versus Christian at some point, right?
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't they? Like this, it's obvious. Like they got to make it freaking happen. Like you can't just leave it in this 6-man tag match. Like no, I want singles. I want Christian Cage versus Adam Copeland. I want them just to kick the crap out of each other and win it, and just have a hell of a match.
There's 8 matches on this card. To be honest with you, I would like there to be less because I know a lot of these matches are all going long. I think Hiroka Shida versus a timeless Tony Storm with her whole black and white pinup photography angle that she does for the AEW Women's World Championship. I think that one could stay on this card. But I think Chris Statlander versus Julia Hart and Sky Blue for the TBS Championship. I'd like to see that off this card. Very similar to what WWE's doing nowadays, where we keep things a little more concise.
Yeah.
I think that's one that this card could go without. And I'm trying to think what else. John Moxley versus Orange Cassidy. I'm looking forward to that match. I don't know where I put it in priority wise on this card. And one match, it's difficult because it is for a belt, so I can see why it's on the card. But Ricky Starks and Big Bill, aka Big Cass, versus Rush and Dralistico versus FTR and the King, the Kings of the Blackthorn and Malachi Black and Brody King.
Yeah. So why? So what's up with that? By the way, like, so we're just like, what happened to like Kings of the Black Throne? Why did they change their name? I don't get that.
I don't follow AEW too close enough to know why. Maybe because the group is shrinking down to maybe Malachi Black and Brody King.
Man, that makes sense. Maybe they're making it because they're tying. I mean, I like the name Kings of the Black Throne because you're throwing in Brody King and Malachi Black. I get that. So that's probably why, because it's a consolidation. I guess that makes sense. When I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's not what I'm used to seeing.
And this group actually started. So when it started in 2021, actually at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, Black and King formed what they called themselves as the Kings of the Black Throne, and then they won that promotion's tag team championship. I think the House of Black essentially refers to the team, but also with Buddy Matthews, and Julia Hart.
Yeah.
So maybe they're still going by that when they're together as a foursome, but maybe as a twosome.
You know what it reminds me of? It's like, okay, the Young Bucks, when they're just the Young Bucks, it's the Young Bucks, and then when they have the rest of the crew, it's like, all right, we're the Elite. I guess maybe that's what they're doing.
Yeah. So I mean, Malachi Black and Brody King are the founders of this group, I guess. So I guess that's just one way to just identify them separately from the rest of the group. And the rest of the clan here. So, I mean, I understand that's the tag team championships on the line, so I get it. It's on the card. But I guess
you can get this on Dynamite, honestly.
My hope, though, is maybe with the more AEW pay-per-views down the line, is that these do get shrunken up, and maybe MJF doesn't defend the title every pay-per-view, not like he does now, anyways. I mean, because
you mean defends titles?
Exactly. So maybe one of these pay-per-views, it's just him defending the tag team titles. Similar, I think, what we saw around the time with the AEW New Japan Forbidden Door pay-per-view, followed by, with Double or Nothing before that, and then the pay-per-view that came after that, and similar to what we saw with All Out and All In, how they were in back-to-back weeks, and how, you saw MJF, have different roles in each of those pay-per-views. Yeah. I don't think they need to be 1 week out, but I think when you have pay-per-views every single month, maybe you can start treating them like WWE is, where, like Roman Reigns isn't on every pay-per-view, right? So you don't which women's championship you defend, it goes back and forth, right? So maybe one pay-per-view, it's a 3-way for the TBS championship. The next pay-per-view, it's for the AEW Women's World Championship. You don't have to have both on
a little bit. Yeah.
I agree. And frankly, obviously, like, what we've talked about before, the AEW, the TBS championship, shouldn't that just be defended on TBS? But that's just me.
Yeah, I think when you have it branded like that, I agree with you. You should have it on just the network. That's me. I'm with you, so I agree.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, it's an interesting pay-per-view. Currently, right now, the get-in price, if you're interested in going, is $66 to get into the pay-per-view. And frankly, if I was in the area, I would definitely go to it, without a doubt. It's located right next door to SoFi Stadium. So I seen the Forum. I was there in person, right? I walked right by it. I parked right next to it or nearby it as I walked by the Forum on my way into SoFi.
Hey, you
Um,
should make sure you got to forget our Canadian audience, just in case they want to go down. It's like $90, right?
It would be $66. Would be similar. Yeah, it would be something like that in case they want to fly. I imagine at this point we're 48 hours away from the show. You would know ahead of time what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
But it should be a good show. I like the venue, and I like the different venue. I guess AEW loves their Chicago, so it's nice that it's not in Chicago for a change. I guess so. Change of venue. And then, hey, the next one's in New York City. You know, it's very WCW like because they're going to be in New York City, right? But they're not at the Garden, they're not at Barclays Center, they're not essentially infringing on WWE's territory. And if those who remember WWE or WCW back in the day when they made their debut in the New York City market, and I think one of their only kind of trips to New York City in its entire history, they went to the Nassau Coliseum. For I think a Clash of the Champions, and I think it was a Clash of the Champions that went up against like Survivor Series or Royal Rumble. I can't remember right now, but it was a big time deal. WCW coming into the New York City market. Like I said, they didn't go to the Garden; they went to the Nassau Coliseum. So that seems to be the great place to enter into the New York City market if you're not WWE and you're trying to test the waters. And see if you can compete, as well as get somebody to let you come to the market. I think AEW has already been to the UBS Arena, but they're going to be there.
Yeah.
But the Forum, a great venue. I don't know why WWE didn't go to the Forum more often. They were always an LA Sports Arena place when they were back in the day, and then they were always Staples Center once that was around. Actually, I would say the WWE's kind of foray into the LA market would be the LA Sports Arena early on, home of WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 7. And then they moved more into the Anaheim Pond, WrestleMania 12, WrestleMania 16.
Yeah.
They were from Anaheim Pond in Anaheim, California. And clearly, obviously, you're banking on the LA market. When you go to Anaheim for WrestleMania, you're essentially testing the waters that you're in LA, right? Because those themes, WrestleMania 12, the theme was Hollywood. So they definitely were going heavy on that aspect of it. But then when Staples Center came around, then WrestleMania came and went into Staples Center. So they're not much of a forum. They're not much of a Great Western Forum, LA Laker place in their day. So maybe that's what AEW will cash in on. Still a good venue, still exists. Home to no professional teams, but still a historic venue nonetheless. So I'm glad they didn't tear it down.
Yeah.
But it should be a good pay-per-view. I will do my best to watch it as it happens. And to see who is the big name, and more importantly, also too, when we're going to get an end to this devil mask, right? When we're going to get an end to that. I don't know if that'll be settled here at Full Gear.
Soon enough.